PLUTO is one of those adaptations that, in my opinion, everybody should watch. It's one of those great things that go on a perfect list alongside Devilman, Berserk, Monster, 20th Century Boys, and many others. It's that real nice thing, and it's amazing. The adaptation is amazing. But before we talk about PLUTO, I want to go to its origins. And we're not talking about the manga, in a way. We are talking about a certain volume from a manga. And that manga is the one beloved by all, Astro Boy. Now, in PLUTO, the world's strongest robot, or as the anime refers to it, the world's biggest robot, we have this robot PLUTO that wants to go out into the world and defeat the 7 most advanced and strongest robots out there. And it's nice. You know, Astro Boy as a whole series is childish, is boyish, it's fun. And I understand how somebody can read that certain chapter 7 of volume 3 of Astro Boy, and make something like PLUTO, the seinen, because that part of Astro Boy has all the right qualities to engage you at a young age and make you invest into the story and its themes. Now, granted, it's goofy, it's Astro Boy, it's made for kids at the end of the day, and the robots look pretty funny, but they are still nice. The story is still nice. The robots are cool, including Mont Blanc. The robots in the Astro Boy manga are cool, and the way there's a friendship formed between Astro Boy's sister Uran and PLUTO is impressive. And I think it's better done in Astro Boy than in PLUTO, in fact. But that's a different story. The whole theme of that certain volume, of that certain chapter of Astro Boy, is about giving up on being the strongest. Sometimes ambition isn't good and it creates hatred. And that's a funny thing, you see, because PLUTO's whole narrative theme at the end of the day is hatred and the cycle of hatred. And PLUTO plays with its theme surprisingly well, incredibly well, in fact. Now, Astro Boy does a good job with what it wants to say and the story it's telling. At the end of the day, it's Astro Boy and it's a clear and cut message. But PLUTO takes it to a whole different level. There are some certain aspects that are the same in both Astro Boy and in PLUTO, but you have to understand, Astro Boy being the basis, it makes sense that some are. But PLUTO develops more certain characters, their motivations, why everything is happening, and changes it to a more mature audience, for a more mature audience. And that's amazing. Now, Astro Boy is good for it in itself. That whole chapter is amazing, but PLUTO takes it to another level. PLUTO's also more of a detective story. It kind of ends being that around the final 2 or 3 episodes, but it keeps the narrative of this detective story. It's a mystery story where they're trying to find out who's this robot that's killing the 7 strongest robots out there. And it's pretty good. There's many conspiracy theories. There's this war that happened before the series began, the 39th Central Asian War. 39th, yes. And all these 7 robots, they're all connected to it. They all participated in the war. And I can't really miss a very important detail. During the whole story of PLUTO, you're gonna get many references to a certain war that happened in kind of the same region, Central Asia, along those lines, during the early 2000s. And the comparison is blatant. Purely blatant. There is no hiding behind the bushes. It's clearly inspired by those stories and what happened there. Now, of course, it's not 1-to-1 because the USA didn't have robots, but nevertheless, it's still amazing and the inspirations are pretty obvious, but they're not really centered on that much. The war is important because it pushes forward what happens into the story, much in the same way the Horus Heresy is important because it pushes the story of 40K and you basically learn its backstory. And quite frankly, I points, I found myself more interested in this backstory, in this 39th Central Asian War, than I did in the main plot. Because while the main plot was good, I want to find out, how did that war go? Apparently, some robots started having PTSD. They have their own special name for it in the manga/anime, but that's not really relevant. Pluto plays a lot into the humanity of robots and how they suffered during the war and how they're trying to change their lives and how they've changed their lives and how they are trying to do better. There's this robot called Epsilon who refused to be part of the war, and because of that he was relegated to cleanup duty. And thanks to that cleanup duty, he started an orphanage in Australia, his native country, to take care of the children that suffered during the war. A very important aspect, while the robots in Astro Boy are goofy because that's the medium, in this one they're basically replicants. Replicant looking, I guess is a way of saying it. They look like human, though they are robots, and they can take off their heads and put them in battle suits and fight with them. There are 2 robots that do that are part of these 7 very powerful robots. And that helps with the humanizing of the characters. And once their time comes, because spoiler alert, their time will come, you really get to feel for them. One of the most impactful episodes, in my opinion, is the second one. The second one has nothing really to do with the first one. Every character you met in the first one don't really appear in this one, and it's just the story of this blind guy that's trying to recompose the song that he had at one time sang with his mother long ago, but he just can't get the notes right. And he has a robot butler, because of course he's blind, and this robot butler was named North Number 2, who was part of the 39th Central Asian War. He wears a cape because his normal body is freaky. Freaky looking, and humans don't really like looking at machines of war in that way. The whole episode is basically based on the idea that the blind guy is trying to make that song, and he hates artificial intelligence, he hates robots, he hates technology, because it can never be as good as humans. But North Number 2 wants to learn how to play the piano, because he doesn't want to go to war anymore. Of course, it affected him, because duh. Anyway, finally they create a bond and they have a friendship, and he learns to play the piano. North Number 2 learns to play the piano. The blind guy gets to finish the song. He learns about his mother, who he thought abandoned him as a child, but in fact she didn't. And then comes Pluto. Pluto's probably one of the best villains created out there. But I guess villain is a wrong word. You have to understand Pluto in the context of more of a monster, like in horror movies. Because you see glimpses of it, you see threads of him, but you never really get to see the monster proper, and you don't really get to see him until almost the end, because it builds the suspense of it. And when Pluto appears, it's a big deal. It's a very important deal. And that really helps with creating tension. That's what makes the story more tense. You want to know, how does this look? You get glimpses of him here and there, but you don't really see a full body. Now, compared to Astro Boy has no problem showing you Pluto, because there's no reason to. Astro Boy's narrative isn't based on mystery or creating tension thanks to the villain. No, it takes the villain and it shows you how evil he can be and how powerful he can be. That all it makes Astro Boy want to be a 1 million horsepower strong robot. And I'm going to say it, Pluto works in both mediums, because they serve different purposes for both Astro Boy and Pluto itself. And it really creates an interesting monster, an interesting villain at the end of the day. This creature out there that you either get glimpses of, or this creature that's really destroying everybody and kind of beats Astro Boy like twice. Nevertheless, Pluto does a good job of taking elements from the original Astro Boy story and making it its own. Now, of course, there are some changed aspects. For example, Pluto's creator is not Choi Choi Ababa. And I hope I said that right. I might not have. Probably not. And the main villain isn't Choi Choi Ababa's robot servant. Though that would have been funny. No, you see, Pluto takes its inspirations and he wears them beautifully out there for everyone to see, But PLUTO isn't afraid to show its own unique spin on things. And I guess that's really a good thing because the creator of PLUTO is the same person that created Monster and 20th Century Boys, which are both things that on this channel we appreciate. Because those are amazing series, those are amazing things created, and they're very good stories. Much in the same way PLUTO is. Don't be put off by the idea that it's based on a comic book for kids or a manga for kids. Because PLUTO isn't afraid of going dark with its themes, with its narrative, and with its scenes. There's also a killer robot in it who was like the first robot that ever killed a human. And the only explanation for that thing is that it's basically a psycho. The robot is a psycho and that's why he did it. There was no malfunction. There was no problem with the robot. He just was a psycho. Granted, that robot will play an important role later, but I'm not spoiling that for you. Now let's go back to the narrative. You see, I mentioned that the narrative theme is based on hatred. It's learning to hate. But robots initially are not programmed to hate. Robots can't really hate. In the whole robotic laws that they have in the universe, robots aren't meant to hate. They cannot feel that, excluding the psycho robot. But yet still, robots do learn to hate in this one, and it's a very important theme. It's a very important story of one of those 7 great robots that are going to be destroyed by PLUTO. Hatred is there, and is this whole idea of the cycle of hatred. The only reason all these things happen is because this thing happened before, and because of that, nothing is going to be alright. Nothing is going to be okay in this world. No matter how much you try to change things, how much you try to become a better person, make a family, help others in need, hatred is still an element that plays a part in this cycle. Your actions hunt you, they come after you, they hunt you, and at the end of the day you can only deal with them like most of the characters that were expecting PLUTO dealt with it, bravely. It might be spoilerish a little, but both Astro Boy and PLUTO end in the same way, and it's basically the same message. Of course in PLUTO it looks better because setting and all that, but still, it is the same ending. And the message is sort of similar, but the impact that it manages to create in PLUTO is extraordinary. And here's my recommendation. PLUTO is a must-watch, a must-read, a must-buy if you can. And if you have children, I think it would be a good idea to give them Astro Boy. Let them look at Astro Boy, let them read Astro Boy. They're going to like it. It's goofy, it's fun, it's for children. You can even read it as an adult and it's still fun. And the idea is, let them read that. The world's strongest robot or biggest robot if it's the anime. And then once they grow up a little, show them PLUTO. And I tell you, they will have a better appreciation for what they read when they were little, like Astro Boy, than most people usually have for things that they were ever forced to read as kids. But I guess that's besides the point. At the end of the day, PLUTO is amazing. It tackles with its themes perfectly. It has interesting characters that you can really latch onto, and you really feel bad once they go. Or some of them go. But once you get that ending, you'll have a better appreciation for things. Also, the whole point it throws at that war in Central Asia is one of the best things about it, if you're like me. But if you're not like me, you can just ignore the whole real-life parallels and just get with it. It's fun and amazing escapism, as it should be, with a very important lesson, and it's amazing. And unless we break the cycle of hatred, nothing will ever change. I like that narrative lesson. I like that idea. This whole based on hatred, everything like that. I really recommend it. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoy this. And I'll see you in the next one.